you so much, all of you, for joining us today. We sincerely appreciate it. So, given that we're talking about constitutional evolution, I guess the best place to start is at the very beginning. So, we look at the Constitution. We see we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure all its citizens justice. So, I will start with the first word there. So, sovereign. And I think that's particularly relevant in the case of Pahalgam. Sai Deepak ji, you've done a lot of work about civilizational narratives. I'd like to hear, how do you see this shaping kind of our understanding of constitutional sovereignty, especially in the wakes of security challenges like we faced recently?
So if I have to weigh in on the question of, is there a conflict between the Nehruvian position as well as, and the civilizational position or the Hindutvaite position, there is a certain degree of conflict. The Nehruvian position starts off with a certain secularization or the negation of Bharat's civilizational history. And then it proceeds under the assumption that the history of Bharat is otherwise a clean slate, and therefore it proceeds to make the claim that all communities have always been indigenous to Bharat, or at least all worldviews and faith systems have been indigenous to Bharat. Whereas on the other hand, the Hindutvaite position basically stakes the position that you don't need to deny the fundamental identity of Bharat's civilization in order to find a respectable place for other worldviews and faith systems within its rubric. And that is not the same as recognizing a two-nation theory. A two-nation theory operates under the assumption that Hindus and Muslims are like water and oil, and therefore they are not miscible at all under any circumstances. That it is possible for both communities to live together, provided there is a clear acknowledgement and admission of Bharat's civilizational identity, without anyone taking a position that not only denies but actively seeks to exterminate the existence of that identity. As long as that social contract and compact is in place, I think we are all on the same page. Now, a lot of people tend to draw a mischievous parallel between the Jinnite position and the Hindutvaite position to say both of them are actually two sides of the same coin. They are not. Because if that were to be the case, then the fact of the matter is, in the last 11 years or since 2014, we should have seen waves of that particular movement resulting in displacement of people who don't share India's civilizational identity. If anything, on the contrary, what has happened is those who belong to or who are adherents of India's civilizational identity have come under greater attack in the last 11 years. That seems to be the situation. So, I am clearly of the view that even if we had to peg this argument or place this argument within the four corners of the Constitution, it is capable of being successfully accommodated as a constitutionally valid argument, without doing injustice to the promise of equality, equal justice and equal treatment in the eyes of law and under the law to all communities. So sometimes what happens is, in our public discourse, we see an invented conflict between constitutional morality and civilizational identity. That conflict, according to me, is manufactured, and its primary goal is to cleanse and exterminate and pixelate our fundamental identity, which has serious consequences for perhaps the last standing dharmic civilization, which has withstood waves of invasions and colonial, let's say, settler colonialism. So, I will have to firmly reject the Nehruvian approach. I have taken a very clear position against it. And the rejection of Nehruvian approach doesn't automatically translate to adoption or embracing of Jinnah's two-nation theory. There is a path in between, and that path in between happens to be Hindutva civilizationalism. That would be my position.
Ghanshyamji, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You've spoken a lot about how certain views kind of I think the term you used was artificial intolerance, when others are thinking about artificial intelligence. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Sai Deepak ji's point.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. Let me start by paying tribute to the victims of the dastardly act in Pahalgam. I think every one of us across the world feel that it could be us, it could be our family members, and every one of such violent activities pains us, strengthens our humanity, and then it brings to the fore the most important question that India faces in such moments. That is this a moment to rise as a nation together, or is this a movement to rise as a religion? Because religion is often pivoted as an anchor in such tragedies. As far as what respected Sai Deepak ji said, I believe in facts. And in the world of artificial intelligence, that is going to be even more important. I cannot compare Nehru to a phantom or to a ghost. The British Empire sucked the blood, the economics, the social fabric of India. No empire has killed as many people in any part of the world as the British Empire. So we can go on to fight the Aurangzebs and Akbars and Humayus, but the fact stays as is. And the people who fought that empire are the true founding fathers of India: Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, Bose, Bhagat Singh, and countless more people. I believe that these people came up with a constitution, and at that time there was an equal opportunity for everybody, those who believed in any other ideology, civilizational journey of India, to stand up, be counted first as freedom fighters for India, fighting this powerful empire. Second, as thought leaders whose thoughts will last and build the architecture of India for the next 75 years and more. Our institutions have lasted, the IITs have lasted, the systems have lasted, the preamble of our constitution has lasted. So for anyone to come and say that this is the ideology that I use to contradict Nehru, I believe such ideologies don't have anybody but ghosts to stand on. The reality is that counterfactuals don't run the future of a nation. In front of us, there was one team who fought for the foundation of modern India, and the ideas of that team has lasted. My final point, if one has to look at last 11 years and think about one person, just one person, because I don't believe in phantoms running the ideology. One leader who stood out and said, this is my ideology and this is how I'm going to defend it. Did you see that leader stand up in parliament and defend it or speak about it? No. In many years, in the last 11 years, after parliament has, our parliament has less sittings than number of Sundays in a year. We have had a time when the government in power decided not to convene parliament because of a state election, or the parliament was disrupted by the government in power. So these are important questions that has to be dealt with in the frame of our constitution. Just to conclude on what was said earlier, nationalistic and non-nationalistic. My father served Indian Air Force. I grew up traveling across 7-8 different states in the country, lived in towns and villages, and never ever, from Tamil Nadu where I did my schooling, to Rajasthan when the parliament was attacked, to Punjab when there was terrorism in Punjab, never ever in a village, in a town, in a city have I found anybody waiting for somebody from outside to come and give anybody a certificate of nationalism. We believe that every citizen, especially in the 2024 election, when constitution became the centerpiece of the center focus of the election, every citizen, wherever they are nationalistic in their own ways, and the constitution becomes the framework by which our nationalism comes together and takes the nation forward. Thank you.
Annamalai sir, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. I think the challenges in Tamil Nadu that Ghanshyamji brought up are slightly different, but relate very closely to what we're discussing. So I'd love to hear your on-ground kind of real-world, on-ground political experience in that.
Thank you, Samyukta. I'll take some time to just get into the topic. And you marked a very important year called 2014 and the constitutional evolution. Many times when you go to the Western institutions, it might send a different message that there is something happening in Indian constitution post 2014, and what is happening is the current government trying to distort the constitution. This is a general feeling that at the Western side I keep seeing it, be it in Oxford and other places. We have to understand, if at all we are talking about constitution, the ethos of constitution, protecting the constitution, it is more in the last few years. I'm going to make certain comparisons post 2014 and before that. Our constitution is amended about 106 times till now. And post 2014, we have done it 8 times, starting from 99th Amendment, 100 till 106. If somebody is carefully studying what are those last 8 amendments post 2014 we have done. We did an amendment, the first amendment we did after 2014 is to exchange certain territories with Bangladesh because we are in agreement. We took some land from them, we have to give a land. Then we brought GST. We extended the reservation in the country for another 10 years, that is one amendment. We gave 1/3 reservation to our mothers and sisters, one amendment. We empowered the state governments to decide who should be the OBCs of our country, that is one amendment. We gave a constitutional mandate to the OBC Commission. These are the 8 amendments we have done post 2014, which each of those single amendment has actually strengthened the Constitution, taken the Constitution forward, so that what you mentioned about the preamble of the Constitution, it is strengthening. If you go slightly previously, the kind of distortions we have seen. I'm only mentioning a couple of amendments, 24th, 25th, 29th, 39th, 42nd. These amendments I'm mentioning in particular because these are classics. When somebody talk about, oh, we preserved the identity of Bharat post-2000, post-1947 till about 2014, now everything is distorted. People should just go and read the 39th Amendment, which was simply brought in on a Thursday in the Parliament, August 7, 1975, which is a Thursday in the Lok Sabha. They brought an amendment to say nobody can question the election of a Prime Minister, the President, the Vice President and the Speaker on a Thursday. August 8, 1975, which is a Friday, the Lok Sabha passes. August 9, 1975, which is a Saturday, 17 legislative assemblies of our country, suddenly they call for a session in the Legislative Assembly, they endorse it. August 11, 1975, which is a Sunday, the President signs it. Because August 12, 1975, the case against Indira Gandhi ji madam is coming in the Supreme Court. Have you seen this kind of distortion? 42nd Amendment. When we talk about the preamble now, certain insertion of words, the word called secular. Now the problem in our country is there is a syndrome that many of our folks have. It is called the over-secularization syndrome. They want to go overboard to prove they are secular. That is uncalled for, unfair. And they, with a distorted lens, they want to see whatever is happening to say that, oh, secularism is getting distorted. Even the recent attack that happened in Pahalgam, which Arnabji very evocatively spoke, if you look at some of the narratives that is happening, they say, no, among the 26 killed, 25 are Hindus, 1 is Muslim, which means the terrorist folk did not see a difference between Hindu and Muslim. But none of them carefully study the modus operandi. None of them carefully study what he said, what was actually happening in the field that particular day. I would say it is a very unfair defense. Many a times I keep facing it. 4 months when I did a small fellowship in Oxford, every single day, and the professors in UK, my only job from morning till night was defending that we are not doing anything wrong in our country. It is not a kangaroo court that is running our country. We are elected by the people. We have a mandate. I am just ending my argument with one more. 2013, the UPA government brought a bill. Luckily, it did not become an act. If I'm recalling that bill for you, it says, Prevention of Targeted Violence, Communal Violence, 2013. If somebody is reading that bill, it came into the parliament. It was debated in parliament. If you read that bill, it says, a communal violence can be done only by a majority community against a minority community. It says only Hindus can always be the aggressor. It is all the time, the Muslims are the people who are suffering at the hands of Hindus. Luckily, the Congress government withdrew in 2013 because the elections were coming, it was becoming a big blowback. This kind of bills, this kind of debates happening. When my friend says that our parliament hasn't sat much, people just have to compare the dates. If people's job coming into the parliament is to oppose one man for the sake of opposing from morning till evening, not allowing the business of the house to happen, and then squarely putting the blame on the government. Did any point of time the government of the day now not call the parliament? Did they not invite the president to come and give the address? Did they prorogue the parliament endlessly to say that the parliament will not sit on a particular date? It is every elected person of this country has got a common wisdom to make sure the institutions of different government function normally. And that is very unfair. I'm very happy that you are starting this particular conclave with this topic, so that people should understand what happened for the last 250 years was like a speed bump, a roadblock. Now we are only trying to set things in right historical context, because in my table also you have mentioned Vikshit Bharat and the promise of a civilizational state. It is important that India should progress towards something called a civilizational state. And a lot of steps is happening in the last 11 years to make sure that is going to happen right in the times you are going to live. Thank you.
Thank you. So you brought up 2 points, and I'd like to pull on that a little bit. So you brought up one, kind of the defense of kangaroo courts. I know, Ghanshyamji, you've expressed a lot of opinions about that. So I'd love to hear that about that from you, given that it's been an interest.
I think in the interest of brevity and time, let me pivot the discussion to the future. We are at Stanford, the birthplace of foundational technologies that shape the future. So artificial intelligence is here. And if we have to judge, and the future generations will actually judge, it will be on their fingertips. Every one of us have mobile phones these days. What any speaker, whether it's the Prime Minister, whether it is journalist, nationalist journalist, or any other journalist, whoever it is, it's only a matter of time that the AI will judge everyone based on the content you have created. You can give your mobile phone to some kind of technology, and it will tell you that the content on your mobile phone, is it true? Is it hateful? Is it harmonious? Is it based on false propaganda? And there could be multiple sections. Professor Myra is there, so many professors would be there. I'm sure this will be scientific and it will be factual. And at that juncture, people will not have a place to hide. Because when a future person interested in history of India will read a lot of things that have been thrown out through various platforms, through media. I'll give you one simple statistics because we spoke about it. If you look at Google Trends and search for the word Hindu and Muslim, India is 80% Hindu. The internet imprint of the word Muslim sometimes is more than the word Hindu. Where is this content coming from? This is just in the last 11 years. This is not a by chance activity. This is a design. So when you analyze this mobile data, you will realize that who are generators of this content that technology will start classifying as hateful, untruthful, disharmonious, not for the Constitution. Final point, why do I pivot to the future? What is India? We talk about civilization. What is India? If you look at the census, whenever it comes out, the number of people under the age of 14, children under the age of 14, will be over 400 million, more than the population of United States. The number of people between age of 14 and 35, 15 and 35, another 400 million. This is where the future belongs to. What are the challenges? Those between 15 and 35, the challenges is what kind of skills they will have, what kind of universities they will go to, what kind of jobs they will have, and who are the people who will shape their thoughts as future citizens of India. The people under 14, their challenges will be what kind of nutrition they will have, what kind of education, early education they will have, what kind of schooling they will have, will they be healthy or not healthy. And if any discourse, 800 million people, if the Prime Minister of the country doesn't talk about it day in, day out, if the Vice President of the country doesn't talk about it day in, day out, if members of Parliament don't talk about it day in, day out, they are not doing their duty. If members of media don't talk about it day in, day out, they are not doing their duty, because today Indian universities don't rank in top 100. At the rate we are going, they are not going to be in top 100. So I think unless we pivot the conversation to the future, we will be battling the ghosts, whether it is ghost of Nehru, or whether it is ghost of Akbar or Aurangzeb. They are not pivoted in the future. And I think that is why it is important that as we reflect on all the things that are being spoken about, we reflect that a moment of truth is right across the corner in the world of artificial intelligence. And as a result, every content will have its impact. And that is where we will come back to our Constitution and see that did this person as a thought leader in society create or speak in a matter that brought equality, in a matter that brought liberty, in a matter that held sovereignty of the country, in a matter that brought fraternity. These are the most important guiding parts of our Constitution. And finally, socialism was socialist and secular. Again, as far as socialist is concerned, final point, when you look at these 400 million children, think about what their economic background is. How many of them will have a parent who has a college degree or a job? How many of them have assets? How many of us here can ever be here if our parents did not have basic assets to fulfill our education? And it is there the idea of socialism versus crony capitalism come in contest. And when in politics the power of money rises, that contest becomes much more significant. I come to a university not to answer all the questions, but actually ask questions, because I think this is the birthplace of the thinking, the ideas that shape the centuries ahead of us. As a result, I am just laying out some questions. I am sure many of the things that I've said will be contested and may be poor answers. And some of my friends are more erudite to come up with better answers. But I do think that if there is one word that will ultimately get added in the world of artificial intelligence to the constitution of the things that we read in the preamble, is the truth. Constitutions of future will have to promise to their citizens an extra word called truth, because truth will be contested in the world of AI. Thank you.
I will pass it to Sai Deepak ji, I think I see. And then I will pass it to Verghese ji, because I think the media angle of this is also particularly interesting, and Ghanshyam ji did bring that up.
You'll have to give me a bit of a leeway to actually address some of the points that Mr. Annamalai and Mr. Ghanshyam ji addressed. You know, the funny part is, every time we discuss the history of this country or the history of Bharat, it's almost as if we are being told any discussion on the history of Bharat is futile because it comes in the way of our economic progress. Because if you look at the most advanced nations in the country or the ones who are upwardly mobile, each one of them has managed to go down the highway of economic progress only after having resolved identity crisis. Whether it's China, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, whoever it may be. Unless and until you have a clear understanding of the self, for you to hope to actually hurtle down the path of, rush down the path of material progress, I think is a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology. Second, I think it is a grave mistake and is a denial of the victimhood of Bharat when you actually say that the discussion about Aurangzeb is a discussion of ghosts and it is a discussion in phantomhood, for the simple reason that it's not about a person, it's about the continuity of the very same mindset that we saw in Pahalgam. The fact of the matter is, two-nation theory did not end or did not result or stop only in the creation of Pakistan and therefore East Pakistan and currently Bangladesh. It continues to play itself out, and who better than Kashmiri Pandits to actually vouch for it, that even after the amendment, not abrogation of Article 370, we continue to see that bloody two-nation theory play itself out on a daily basis. 3, this is something that's very crucial when somebody says that artificial intelligence will only look at truth, it will only look at facts. Whether it is a document or artificial intelligence, it depends on the kind of prejudices that people load that particular system with at the outset. It is the kind of biases that people load it with. Artificial intelligence in itself is not the touchstone of truth. The fact that it is capable of fabricating truth, I think, is playing itself out on a daily basis. So let's be clear that whether it is a document such as the Constitution or artificial intelligence, it is capable of being fed a certain, let's say, worldview which loads the dice against others. Okay, now let's come to the question of truth, equality. Is a discussion on Article 370, which gives equal rights to everyone to become citizens of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, a discussion on equality or inequality? Is a discussion on giving fair treatment to the Dalits of Kashmir a discussion of equality or inequality? Is the abrogation of Article 35A, which resulted in mass discrimination of both women as well as Dalits in Kashmir, is it a discussion on equality or inequality? After close to 400 years of contestation, if one piece of religious worship is finally given to a particular community, that to a majority community, after 3 rounds of battles in the Supreme Court and the High Court and other places, tell me what does it say about the constitutional security of this country? 3, why is it that a discussion on uniformity in secular civil laws, how is that unequal, how is that unfair? Which of these conversations results in inequality? And how is it that the ones who take a position against Uniform Civil Code, against the amendment to 370, against a judgment of the Constitutional Bench of the Supreme Court on Ram Janmabhoomi, how do they get to hold forth on equality and fairness, while the rest of us who are batting for it are somehow seen as purveyors of inequality and unfairness? 3, and I think this is extremely crucial, please understand. The fact of the matter is, there is a serious contestation with respect to Bharat's pre-independent history as well as post-independent history, and especially on the constitutional history, because Mr. Annamalai gave a couple of examples. I'll just give one example and close it with that. What is the First Amendment of the American Constitution? It is meant to be a pro-free speech amendment. The Second Amendment speaks of gun control. It speaks of right to bear arms. Do you know what is the First Amendment of the Indian Constitution? It is the truncation of free speech, not expansion of free speech. And exactly how did this happen? Because we are constantly being told that someone built this, someone built that. So let me exactly contribute to this particular conversation on how they truncated free speech in this country, in Bharat. The original restrictions on free speech were very narrow under Article 19 as it existed, Article 19(2) of the Constitution as it existed in the 1950 version. Now, the fount of all that is good and great with Bharat, Shri Pandit Nehru, was embarking on a journey of land reform laws, which was met with stiff opposition by the communists of his period, who said what you're doing is not right, it is not constitutional, and it is elitist. And they were writing tomes and tomes of articles criticizing his land reform initiatives across the board. One of them was Romesh Thapar, a communist. And why is this important? Romesh Thapar versus Union of India is the very first judgment that you will read on free speech. So what did Shri Nehru do? All his land reform initiatives were put in a particular schedule of the Constitution, the 9th schedule, and 9th schedule, any law that is placed in the 9th schedule is rendered immune from a constitutional challenge before any court. That was the first promulgation. The second thing that was done was to expand the scope of restrictions on free speech by making it as vague and broad as possible. Now, the person who aided him and who was the lawyer of the government at that point, the law minister, was Dr. Ambedkar, who aided Mr. Nehru's initiatives in expanding the scope of limitations on free speech. And till date, unfortunately, nobody has brought or dragged the First Amendment to the Indian Constitution to the court, challenging its own constitutionality, saying, how did this even happen in the first place? So to actually hold forth on how they have built institutions, if somebody has a problem with the extent and the state of free speech in Bharat today, then go back to the prime mover, the root cause, the first cause of all that is great and good with Bharat, Shri Nehru. This is the reality of it. The reason why the word secular was even kept outside the purvey of our preamble when the framers of the Constitution, we don't have a founding father, we have founding fathers and mothers. That is the egalitarianism of the Indian Constitution. They said secularism is a word that is capable of multiple interpretations, some of which are rank mischievous. So keep it out. It was brought in during the emergency surreptitiously, and ask yourself whether the mischief that was anticipated stands validated today on a daily basis when secularism becomes the touchstone of every policy. So I must say that please never approach constitutionalism or artificial intelligence with blinkers on as if it is free of any kind of biases or it is fundamentally neutral at the outset. It is a document, it is a man-made document, it is a man-made system. It is therefore informed by the biases of the people who create it. Finally, I'd only want to say this. The fact of the matter is, in the last 11 years, as much as I have a lot to say in terms of criticism of the current dispensation at the center, I will be the first person to say it is this dispensation that has managed to finally shape the world's positive attitude towards Bharat after decades of being associated with snake charmership. The fact of the matter is that the Indian passport today carries a lot more value since 2014 as it did before, than it did before. 3, people must constantly speak of equality, people must constantly speak of development. The fact of the matter is the politician must not just speak, the politician must do and act. Garibi Hatao became a symbol and a slogan for decades, and Garibi was never Hatao-fied until 2014, because that is the way you keep and cultivate a vote bank. Whereas the digital stack has done 2 things in Bharat. It has broken the notion that access to digital technologies must be limited only to elite spaces. 2, it shows that Indians have fundamentally high degrees of native intelligence that makes it possible for them to use these technologies. 3, it has managed to make government transfers accessible directly so that there is no slip between the cup, namely the government, and the lip, namely the people. Now tell me who's done more as opposed to speaking more. I'll leave it to the audience to decide.
But history, I'd like you to weigh in on specifically Sai Deepak Ji's comments on free speech. I think that's something that you've spoken extensively about in your book on the Trump-US, Trump and Modi kind of relationship.
I think I will very briefly touch upon that. As Sai Deepak is very correct in analyzing the fact, but the only additional point I would add to that thing is that there is a logic of the state, which is a very secular process, for the lack of another word. The logic of the state is that the state wants to control what is said, what is not said, what is censored, and what is propagated. So what is the syllabus? What is the national media? We all know about how information ecosystems are built and how it thrives, what are the business models. Therefore, yes, the state actually interferes in what is legitimate speech and what is legitimate politics. In fact, I had argued elsewhere that there is politics that is extraordinary and there is ordinary politics. Extraordinary politics is what creates or what dismantles existing order and establishes a new order. The creation of a constitution is through extraordinary politics. When the adoption of the constitution, Dr. Ambedkar says civil disobedience was good until today. But now that we have a constitution that is we have given to ourselves, we the people, the sovereign, has acted and we given to ourselves, there is no longer do you have the liberty of civil disobedience. That should be junked. That should not be a legitimate way of doing politics. This is how India's constitutional history begins. In the very quick minutes that we have before this session concludes, I really want to touch upon the original theme of the session, that is the evolution of the Indian Constitution and what actually happens in 2014. So you have to note one thing. So everybody, the BJP, the Congress, all the entire spectrum of Indian politicians and politics, they are actually united in one argument, that everybody says that they are on the side of the Constitution. You would be familiar, living in the United States, you would be very familiar with that argument, both the Democrats and the Republicans. Donald Trump and his critics, all of them say, we are the real guardians of the US Constitution. All politicians in India today claim that they are the real guardians of Indian Constitution. When you go all the way back to the 1950s, pretty much nobody accepted Indian Constitution. That's reality. Though we celebrated, everybody had something to say critical about the Constitution. The Marxists had one view, the Jansang had a different view, the Congress itself, Nehru himself, Ambedkar himself would be looking at the Constitution, the freshly made Constitution, and looking for reasons or things that they thought were inadequately drafted or required amendment, and that is the whole thing began. But now everybody swears by Constitution. But in the interim, we have at least 3 occasions when insurrections actually challenge the constitutional order and try to rebuild what is order. One was the JP movement, the second was Ayodhya movement, and the third, Ayodhya movement, and particularly the demolition of the Babri Masjid, and third was Anna Hazare movement. All these 3 phases in India's political evolution actually challenge the existing constitutional order and try to bring in a new order. I would say 2014 was the culmination in a way of restructuring the order. In fact, if you go back and actually listen to the speeches made at the inauguration of the Ram Janmabhoomi temple in early 2014, the Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister actually says the singularity of that moment. This is a moment that we had waited for hundreds of years. So there is a singularity of time and there is a singularity of the place. So a new order is being created. So what does a new order mean? There is a different way in which we define we the people. In fact, there is a very interesting segment in the Supreme Court judgment. So this is not only the BJP or the political process alone. In fact, it's also through judicial interpretation. When you look at the Supreme Court judgment on Article 370, what it actually interprets we the people. The question was whether Kashmir had any residual sovereignty left, because you had raised the question of sovereignty in the early part of this conversation. The Supreme Court concluded that Kashmir has no residual sovereignty which is separate from we the people as India as a whole. So what the implication of that interpretation is that, so you can have a majority that is won from any place, and you can change the structure or the rules or the rights of everybody, or particularly in another place. The point being that both in changing the structure of Kashmir's constitutional status, and in the recent Act, what actually happens is that there is no representation of the most affected people in that process. It is true that it is through a constitutionally valid mechanism of parliamentary majority how it is affected. But this actually compares with the original scheme of how, when Sardar Patel himself was heading a special committee which was to address the special requirements of tribals, excluded communities, religious minorities, and it actually goes on to say that how their representation will have to be, their voices will have to be heard before you actually write the provisions that affect them. That is a significant change when you say people as a whole, the entire country as a whole, and that majority out of that thing, I fear that actually borders on the risk of majoritarianism as opposed to a representative parliamentary constitution. That is one thing. And I don't agreement with the fact, or argument about India's civilization identity and its heritage. But the only caveat we try to explore is civilization is also a journey. There is, when we speak about specific binaries, I would as much be in disagreement with the argument that the nation of India begins on 1947 or 1950 or 1952, as much as to say that there is a particular mode of Indian civilization, because we all know the modern Indian history is about Shuddhi movement. We want to actually know what actually is the purest of the civilization. There is the idea of Indian Islam being not authentic Islam because it has had local influences, local Hindu influences. So to civilization itself, whether you call it Hindu, Indic, Indian, whatever it is, that itself is an evolutionary process. You of you people who are sitting in Stanford, living in the United States, you would actually appreciate the fact that the idea of Indian civilization evolves. If you actually go and read very recent book of Manu S. Pillai's The Making of Modern Hindu Consciousness, or you go back to Diana Heck's Sacred Geography, or R. Chambagalashmi. So the idea of what we called Hindu religion or Hindu faith or Hindu civilization, that is evolving over centuries and millennia. So when we take that aspect into account, I think we can have a much more exploratory, inclusive notion of what civilization is, what our nationhood is, what our notion of self is, etc. So I would say in 2014, yes, what happens is there is a shift in the way we understand Constitution, with the way we understand the idea of people, the way we significantly shifted the emphasis or the role of the state from a provider and guardian of the rights of the city to enforcer of duties of that nuance across here. But there is a shift, and we are actually, I think Mr. Annamalai or somebody referred to, or Sai Deepak referred to the idea of a social contract. I would argue that we are in the midst of trying to renegotiate the social contract as it existed. There is nothing bad about it, but only thing that we have to be mindful is that renegotiation or relitigation of social contract, you have to be civilized, non-violent, very accommodative, with a larger purpose of making India stronger and equipped for the challenges of the day.
Thank you so much, Verghese ji. I think now we'll open it up for questions. I'm sure a lot of people...
Can I just respond to a few points? Yeah, I think it's important to respond to that. A lot of words are thrown now, majoritarianism, this, that, constitutional distortion. One of the preeminent historian of our time, Arnold Toynbee, in 1971, in a lecture in Delhi, the Azad Memorial Lecture, He compared two countries, state of two countries, Poland under the occupation of Russia, 1600 to 1915, to India, continuous occupation, Bharat, by different powers to be. He said the first thing the Poles did in 1915, once they got independence from Russia, the first thing they did is, they went to their central square. Russians during the invasion have put up the Russian Orthodox Church, a symbol right in the central square, because they felt every day the Poles should see. That should be an ocular symbol of the aggressor. The Poles, first day they came, they removed that, they threw it away. They said, we are Roman Catholics, we'll put our symbol. He compared that to what is happening in our country for a long, long time. When you talk about, I'm not getting into the Ram temple now, that is resolved. I'm taking about 2-3 other issues. It is not to ponder or to take the ghost out or the phantoms out, like my brother said. I'm just taking 2-3 examples. If you don't resolve it, you become an economic powerhouse. Where is your rootedness? Of course, you are going to be an economic powerhouse. It is not that India is decelerated economically. We are only progressing. That is another chapter for another day. I'm just taking the Benares Kasi temple. 1100, Qutbuddin Aibak destroyed. Khiljis, Goris. During the Babur time, a temple was built. Aurangzeb time, again destroyed. 1809, in the communal right, again destroyed. From 1835, a court case pending to accurately say where is the temple. On top of the temple, a mosque is built. 1991, conveniently we bring a law, because it is in the Congress manifesto. 1991, we bring a law and we say, places of worship Act 1991, nobody should get into.
Which was debated for 2 days.
2 days.
Without a debate.
Nobody can get into any of this as a debate, because we, the Congress party, we have decided, because we have a majority. 1947, when we got independence, post that date, only Ram temple is an unresolved issue. Other things are resolved issue. 1,000 years people are fighting. People are given life. It is a continuous battle. You bring a parliament law in 1991 to say nobody can debate about the Benares temple and the Gyanvapi mosque. When suddenly, when people want to talk about it, we are called as Hindutvaist, majoritarianism, and we are trying to distort the constitution. That is very unfair. Without resolving, you as a country, how are you going to move forward? Now, Mr. Chandrachud, the previous Chief Justice of our country, in one of his last judgment, he said, yes, right. We have to reopen and see the character of the mosque, whether a temple pre-existed. I think it is important now as a country, we get into a lot of these unresolved issues and start resolving in a peaceful way, in a sense of brotherhood, in a sense of fraternity, in a sense of respectfulness for all the community. There cannot be one single community which says that, no, we are the sole guardians of secularism in our country. In our country, Samyukta, you should be knowing this. There are 13,764 minority institutions. 13,764. The Constitution gives them a mandate. In this 13,764 minority institutions, no reservation is applied. But in Tamil Nadu, the state in which I belong to, 478,000 acre of temple land is under government control. If I question that, they will say you're against the Constitution. But nobody will talk about 13,000 and not minority institutions where no reservation is applied. We accept it, fine. It's a Supreme Court judgment. But all over our country, 7.5 lakh acre of land is occupied by governments, temple lands. And how are you going to resolve it? Again, I'm coming to the Waqf issue. When you want to talk about Waqf, a lot of our friends will say, no, why are you opening a Pandora's box? Till 2013, you had 18 lakh acres under the Waqf management. Last 10 years, 21 lakh acres got added. Last 10 years. 39 lakh acres under the Waqf board. That too from 2013, you're talking of Waqf by user. Anybody can come and say, this is my land. The temple lands are classified as Waqf land. Last 10 years, we have added 21 lakh acres. What stops you and me, the people of our country, from bringing a law in the parliament to clarify how a land should be classified as Waqf? Again, if you do this, people call majoritarian. No, since you are in power, you are using a majority brute force. If you want to use the majority brute force, we might not have waited for the Supreme Court judgment. You would have brought something called a Ram Temple Act in the parliament and built a Ram Temple. Why did we wait for the Supreme Court to resolve it? That is a sign of maturity, a wisdom of a country. The same way, unless you don't resolve the Madura, unless you don't resolve the Benares, unless you don't resolve all this, like my brother said, the ghost will be hiding under his bedroom, under his bathroom. One day the ghost is going to come out. It is better you allow all the ghosts and phantoms to come out now. Resolve it. Once for all, you clean your slate and then you move forward.
Okay, I really apologize. We do need to, we'll take one question because I know people really want to. I'm going to leave it to Gauri because I'm not.
Okay, go ahead.
There are a lot of people.
Hello, namaste. My name is Sparsh. So just to point specifically to the 2024 election. So in the run-up to that, we had the campaign by the BJP-led government where we were paving a way for Viksit Bharat. And we had PM Modi come on multiple occasions saying we want to pave a way for Bharat that is strong and like well developed by year 2047. On the other hand, we had a very dangerous game being played by the opposition, Congress-led alliance, where they were sort of forming a caste-based narrative and saying we should have caste-based reservation, we should drive forward for a caste census and so on. Ever since 2014, we have seen that PM Modi and the BJP-led government has done a lot in consolidating the Hindu votes and consolidating the Hindu society. But caste-based reservation policy still continues to take place.
Can we get to the question, please?
Yeah. So my question is, leading to 2047, is there ever a way where we can have independence of caste-based reservation and a meritocratic society?
Who's the question?
We request that we keep the comments short, please.
Well, I think I'll link it to ghosts and others, phantoms. I think everything that has been said, I start with the point that I made. If there was one person, we speak about Nehru, we speak about Nehruvian ideology, we speak about Gandhiji, we speak about his ideology. If there was one person in the BJP so far that would stand up and say, this is my ideology, this is how I'll build institutions in the country. One person, say it in parliament. Do a press conference. January 2014 was the last time an Indian Prime Minister did a press conference, if I'm not right. Please point it out. Do a press conference. There are a number of unresolved issues. I'm sure a Prime Minister who is very popular can do a press conference and answer that. So on the idea of merit-based society, caste-based society, I think there's a long list of social justice movement that one has to read about and ask some very basic questions. What amount of, talk about caste census, what amount of land in India, somebody spoke about land, is held by the over 20% scheduled castes who are in India? What amount of land is held by the scheduled tribes who are in India? What amount of land is held by, if you look at the British Empire, one of the way they sucked the lifeblood out of India was absentee landlordism. That ensured that people who had nothing to do with land owned the land. That is one way India will be destroyed, if people who don't use the land for the right purpose own the land. So this is an extensive topic. I just want to say that finally, whenever a Prime Minister is elected, a new parliament is elected, we are like batsmen. There's a huge total we are chasing, which is a total that will take India to a developed status. Every batsman, whether it was Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, or whether it is Prime Minister Modi, every batsman plays their shots, make their scores. And there are others who are responsible for future generation to take that score forward. Someday a batsman will get out, and it is fair to discuss whether the batsman played the number of balls they played in a fair way or not. I believe that if the batsmen of today don't speak about the future of the country in the world of artificial intelligence era, and they keep talking about ghosts of the past, they are missing the balls.
I'll respond to that. I personally believe that we have elected the Prime Minister of our country to govern and not to do press conference and increase the TRP of television channels. We're very clear about that. And when I sit here, I talk for the Prime Minister because we belong to the same party. All of us are Karyakata. That is how we see it. And I am responsibly sure whoever is there, each of the words that we speak, we're very careful with respect to what we speak. And we expect the Prime Minister to come and do press conference. It is our only job to increase all the TRPs and to answer a select group of people, 50 people. Who are those 50 people? So I'm not getting into that. I'm sure we have a collective wisdom to tide over that and look at Prime Minister in terms of the performance he's doing. Now, with respect to the reservation, we have to understand The Constitution extends the reservation for every 10 years. Reservation is not in perpetuity. You keep extending it for 10 years. With an understanding that people should keep quickly coming up, and you have a measurable value in which you can see whether people are improving. Recently, when a Supreme Court gave a judgment with respect to the SC and ST, with respect to the reservation policy, it might not be applicable to every single person, because if somebody has utilized it once, then probably we have to take a relook at it. Then our government, the current government in power, we said we don't agree with the wisdom of the Supreme Court, and we said further, no, the situation is not conducive. The socio-economic conditions are not conducive for us to just go back and say we are going to limit reservation to a certain segment. As we speak, we have to understand historically as we speak now, if you look at the socio-economic indicators, OBC, SC and ST, in whatever context they have suffered, there is an historical problem. Even now, it is not that they all on the same platform, they all do a same 100-meter running race. It is still there. I think it is our duty, all of us as common citizens, to make sure still that level of equality is met. We have to handhold and keep pushing and keep taking them along. That is the response I can give. But having said it, I am very sure one fine day as a country, we all look at it. And even right now, reservation is not there for every single thing. And even anybody coming through reservation, we should not put our head down and say, oh, they came through the reservation, probably the quality is not good. No, it is not. People who have come through the reservation channel, be it the civil services, they are fantastic administrators. It is just that some point of time they need a leg up, somebody need to pull their hand and give them a fair opportunity. Yes.
I know Vachichi had some final comments, but I know we could probably discuss.
Student question, one student question. I was told Jatin to take.
Okay, yeah. One question, but please keep it short.
Hi, my name is Vasant. I am a sophomore at the University of Houston. And my question is actually directed to Mr. Tiwari. With due respect, Gandhi and Nehru did fight against the British, but while fighting against the British, they stripped India of their civilizational Hindu identity. While fighting external colonialism, they left Hindus defenseless in their own homeland. How do you justify continuing to defend their legacy today? Thanks.
The greatest civilizational battle that India has fought, we as Indians, our forefathers fought, obviously is against the one who dealt the most bloody blows on India, economically, socially, the thought of India, and that were the British. And the people who fought them successfully, I will always see them as heroes. Do not forget that there was a parallel organization who stood shoulder to shoulder with the British, did not fight them. And when Gandhi was assassinated by one of their own, they distributed sweets. They celebrated. They ensured, they were accused in the court as a co-conspirator. Sardar Patel banned them. So to go back, as I said, counterfactuals don't run the nation's future. Anyone could have been there and stood up and become the hero, founding father of a modern India. But Gandhi did, Nehru did. Nehru spent more than 10 years in jail, as much time that the current Indian Prime Minister has been the Prime Minister. He went to jail not knowing that whether India would gain freedom or not. So I will not find any way to belittle the contribution of anyone who fought the British and won us the freedom. We are here standing tall on the sacrifices they have made.
Can I take a shot at that? I think it's important to actually make this point. And it ties into the previous point. When a particular ideological position chooses to benchmark itself as the neutral position, there is no greater mischief that is actually committed. When you choose to make yourself as the benchmark, when you actually have an ideological bias, then you actually do grave injustice to everybody else's position. And here I think people need to revisit this entire history. Who made Mr. Mahatma Gandhi, or let's say Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the father of India? Where did this title come from? And why are we expected to buy this lock, stock and barrel, hook, line and sinker, that all of them shed blood or they were political prisoners? The one thing that I think the scholarship of the last decade has established very clearly, irrefutably if I may say so, is They were political elites who enjoyed the best of conditions in these jails, when the fact of the matter is, the true movement of the revolutionaries was continuously sidelined, and they were the ones to suffer incarceration of the worst possible kind in the cellular jail. And the fact of the matter is, be it the Congress or the movement that was led by it, please read into the history of it. They started off by clearly saying that they only wanted the dominion status within the British Empire. That was the stated position until the revolutionaries said, this cannot be the position, we want Purna Swaraj, complete independence. So the so-called party that was established by Alan O. Hume, specifically under the instructions that if the revolutionary movement prior to that was not curbed, or it was not given a particular voice through a political platform, then India would erupt. The Congress was set up in the language of the British as a safety valve to ensure that this anger is directed towards British interests as opposed to against British interests. This is the history, which is why I keep saying the history of the last 11 years since 2014 is the so-called status quo that all of us are expected to buy and which has become the gospel truth, has been challenged over and over again. And we are the ones who are trying to exercise free speech, dissenting against an established narrative, and we are the ones who are called fascists. That is the so-called hypocrisy of the ongoing public discourse. Unfortunately, it just so happens that certain Western publications are in cahoots with the establishment when it comes to pushing this narrative over and over again, as opposed to giving us dissenters a platform and a space to explain what is the true nature of it. To put it in the language of, let's say, certain popular movements here, we are the true indigenous voices. We are finally getting to tell our story. Let us tell our story.
Samyukta, I'll just take a minute to respond. Now, who banned RSS? The government of the day. The government bans it. Because Nehruji, if anybody had the opportunity to read the will of Mr. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the last will, he says, I should not be given a Hindu religious ceremony when I die. This is Mr. Nehru. When Rajendra Prasad ji wanted to go and attend the ceremony in Somnath, the Kumbhavisheka that is happening, the Prime Minister of our country said this is called Hindu revivalism. How can the President go and attend? I'm just putting things in context. Even today, our government can ban Congress Sevadal and say it is anti-national. Anybody in the government can do that. Just sense of whitewashing history and the Congress banning RSS multiple times and saying that, oh, they're banned. Which court has convicted them? Which court has said that they are involved in the assassination of the great Mahatma Gandhi ji? And I think we have to move beyond it and still taking recourse to whatever has happened. This false truth, this pseudo-truth, and trying to spin this argument out of this again and again and again. That is the problem. From 2014, we are trying our best as a country to address it, to move away from this half-truth and pseudo-truth and false truth so that we get a sense of history. I'm sure the students at Stanford, by scheduling this topic early in the morning, you're clearly showing that you want to read, understand, make your own mind. Mohandas Pai ji is sitting here from his own state. One of the greatest preeminent, the current writer, Mr. Bhairappa is there, historian. Somebody has got time, please read his foreword. He has written to Vikram Sampath's Tipu Sultan book. Just read his foreword. He says, I worked in the education department for a long time. When they want to even do some minor alteration to the history of Tipu Sultan, the education secretary used to ban saying, why do you want to do it? We have a certain sense of history that from 1947, let us continue. Why do you want to bring new things into Indian history? That is the problem. That is why Mr. Sai Deepak or Vikram Sampath and others, they're trying to tell a story that is true, that is original, that got distorted for a long time from 1947. Let us respect those voices also. I'm not taking offense to my brother. That voice is important. But let us put our mind to also understand the other voice so that you make your judgment, your decision by listening to both sides of the coin. Thank you so much.
We will have really two-sentence, please, Varghese ji, a quick finisher to this very firebrand of a panel.
Well, I think thank you for allowing me to be with these esteemed colleagues and at the Stanford conference where, so only 2 lines as you put the limit on. So the question of caste reservation, that is a point of disagreement, point of agreement across all these opinions here and across India's political spectrum. Everybody agrees that caste-based reservation continues. That is an amendment which gets extended every 10 years without any controversy, without any debate. The last time when we had a debate on it was in 2015, when the RSS chief, during the, said that there should be a debate on caste-based reservation. And in subsequent years, the chief himself has said that considering the historic particularities of India, this is not time to open a debate on it. It will have to continue as long as it takes. So that is a point of agreement, I think, everybody on this panel, and I think across all political parties and opinions, everybody in India seems to be on agreement on that.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate everybody's participation in this panel.